Hey, so if you don't know me, I'm Manuel Rasnowski. I'm a junior and I'm 17 at Lansing Catholic High School. I want to ask this question just to start off here. What does love mean to you? We see love every day, with our parents, maybe with your friends. We see it all around us. Now, there are 3 types of love, according to the Greeks and in the Bible. If you study Latin, you might go over this. I don't know how many of you are taking Latin, but I did. It was a great class, and I loved Magistra. Anyways, 3 types of love. Eros, as seen in Western culture, the romantic type of love. The love you see between 2 lovers, a couple, your mom and dad, stuff like that. Number 2, philios love. The love between brothers, the bond, the friendship. Just like the state Philadelphia, it was founded as a state of love. The friendship and kindness that a bond like that brings together. And thirdly, agape love. Perfect love. The ultimate sacrifice. The kind of love that you would die for someone. And there's someone who loves you perfectly right here. And he's hanging on that cross because he did that for you. And here's the story of how I figured out that all of that perfect love, that ultimate sacrifice, was all for me. High school was not good for me. I mean, it is good now, but freshman and sophomore year, it was probably the worst times of my life. I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be popular, I wanted to be with the football jocks, I wanted them to realize that I was a cool kid, so I ran for student council president, or student council rep. I was the big guy for my grade, for freshman and sophomore year, that was me. But I wanted to fit in more. I wanted everyone to come to me and be like, yo, that's Manuel, that's my friend, that's my guy. And those quote-unquote friends, when COVID hit, when I couldn't be in the hallways and be Mr. Popular, I would go out and hang with the quote-unquote popular kids. And those popular kids like to do a lot of bad things. I got into vaping at just 14, I think, when I went to freshman year, 14 years old. And I would do that. I would go out with my friends every day, say, hey, Mom, me and my friends are going to go hang out. And we'd go and we'd get buzzed. And then I'd go home and I'd be laying there in bed and saying, God, what am I doing? I'd be sad and hurt because I didn't have any real philios love. I didn't have any real friendships at that point, and I was very far away from realizing that all of that agape love was, there for me. So I went out the next day, over and over again. I would do these acts of cruelty to him, and I would chase that little buzz for a moment where I could forget I was hurting so bad. Turned sophomore year. As I got older, so did my experiences grew. More pain. My depression turned to suicidal thoughts. My addiction to this chemical turned to an addiction to drugs and alcohol. And I was living a life of someone desperately trying to find a reason to keep going. I would wake up every morning and try so desperately to get up, and sometimes I would just not go to school. And it only got worse when I got a car and I could drive, because I could go to parties and sleep over and drive home like nothing happened. Soaked in my despair, I was ready to give up. And I sat in the aisle on Christmas Eve Mass, because I would do that. I would go to Mass with my family and pretend like nothing was wrong. And I stared up at that crucifix. And I left the church because I was so ashamed to look at him. I ran from him. Rather than sitting there and accepting his mercy that he was offering me, I went home, and later that day, I was invited to a sleepover. Through all this, I had one good friend that I had found. And we'd talk, and whenever I told them how much I was hurting, they would hurt too. And that meant so much to me. But I couldn't tell them about the struggles with the drugs and the alcohol because I knew it would destroy them. They would do anything in their power to stop me had I told them about that. And there was one night, before the night of the sleepover, I was so tempted to tell them that I was so hurt and so afraid to just go and wake up the next morning. But I didn't, because I didn't want to hurt them. That night, December 29th, there was no surprise that there was alcohol at that sleepover. I drank and drank, and this kid came up to me and said, "Hey, Manuel, you take your vodka really well." So I drank more and more. And I got so drunk that I ended up hurting one of my very best friends that night. I hurt them a lot. And I went home the next day, half drunk. It was horrifying driving, by the way. Don't do that ever. I will never do that again. But sorry, it's a lot. But I remember driving. I remember taking a right turn down Cornell and kind of realizing what had happened, because I don't remember a lot, but from what I was told, I was horrified. I got home and went into bed and laid there for the entire night and day and 2 nights. And then I got texts from friends who would soon be the support of my life. They realized what the wrongs I had done, and that they still saw the good in me. They convinced me to go to discipleship group one morning. They convinced me to go to confession. And those friends are the very friends that still stand by me right now. In the hallways at school, people found out about my partying too hard. I was harassed. People called me names. When I was alone, it hurt a lot. It felt like the world had conspired against me to ruin my whole life, to make me feel afraid of growing, to convince me to repress the urge to move forward. And finally, I was sitting here in adoration one night, convinced that even though I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs, I still felt alone. And I didn't understand that that was everything. I sat there on the ground, just like this, staring up at the crucifix. And I asked God, why am I not dead? Why haven't you punished me? Why is it that you can just forgive me for every wrong that I've committed? And then I got this vision of me whipping Christ, of me beating Christ, putting the crown of thorns on his head, nailing the nails into his hands and his feet, and finally stabbing him on the side. And then I sat there crying, and then he gave me a hug, and he told me he loved me. He said, "This is the price of your sins. I did that for you, so you could be free." Sorry. The greatest love in the universe came down to me and opened my heart because I couldn't do it myself. He's waiting for you to come home. The parable of the prodigal son. He went out, destroyed his life, spent all of his money, and came home. And his dad hugged him and threw him a party. The greatest love in the universe is yours. Thank you.